and welcome to the Week 9 edition of the Survivor Podcast. It is Matt Brown. It is Steven Andrus. And if you are still paying attention to these things, good on you. You have survived a pretty tough NFL season to date. And we're glad that you, and even if you bought back in, thanks for being here. Thanks for watching all the stuff we do. Absolutely free, as always. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button, and you'll get all the great stuff that we put here on the channel. Steven, just right off the top, this is one of the harder weeks in the NFL to navigate top to bottom than I remember in a very long time. Not only do we have a whole bunch of pretty close spreads, but we have a whole bunch of turmoil going on, guys getting traded, injury situations, all of that. And so we have a hodgepodge of quarterbacks that, are going to get some significant playing time this week that we don't have really any idea about them. And then, like I said, just a really massive amount of close. I mean, we're talking 2.5 to 3.5 point games just all up and down the board.
That's what drew my eye, is that there's so many games just hovering around that key number of 3, and a lot of them are home favorites, so they're getting a little bit for home field advantage, and just crap quarterbacks, Matt. Like, the league is just littered with them now, and you throw in the Kirk Cousins injury, that makes it even worse. Matthew Stafford's got the thumb. I'd be surprised if he plays this week. We talked to Christian Cipollini, the trading manager over at BetMGM, and he can't remember this many games with totals in the mid-30s seemingly week after week in the NFL at this point in the season. You get it every once in a while at the very end of the season when teams are just, packing it in, but to only be 2 months into the season, the product across a lot of the league is really bad. Now, there's a couple of games this week, 3 or 4 that are really good, but big teardrop to a bunch of crap quarterbacks and offenses that you can't rely to move the ball, and that's going to make for some difficult Survivor strategy this week, I think.
Yeah, we typically start with anything 6 points or longer as the obvious options. Well, there are only a couple of games that fit the bill this week with that. It is the Saints, 7.5 point favorites over the Bears, and then the Browns, 7.5 point favorites over the Cardinals. There is not another game that meets the 6 point threshold that we've kind of been using here on this podcast. There is a 5.5 on the Ravens over the Seahawks. There is a 4.5, the Falcons over the Vikings. If you guys did not hear, Josh Dobbs got traded to the Vikings, but I don't know if he's going to be able to make it in there in time to start this week for them. So it is likely going to be one of they actually have 3 different guys that they could choose from the Vikings. They were very kind of, coy about who they were going to go with there in Minnesota. We know probably not loving playing the Ravens at 5.5 over the Seahawks. Seahawks are a really good team. So, Steven, unfortunately, we have to really and truly consider the Saints and the Browns this week. And, look, the Saints have done nothing to make you feel great about clicking the button for them. The Browns certainly on the offensive side have done nothing to make you feel great about clicking the button for them. The only issue that we're dealing with here with this that could change your mind is the fact that it's going to be Clayton Tune that is starting for the Cardinals this week. And so can this defense up against Clayton Tune keep them from scoring more than 13 points? If that's the case, even as bad as the Browns have been, this is a really bad Cardinals defense. You would think that they could outscore them as long as they can hold them to 13 or fewer points. But rough week up and down, and really you have to start with the Saints and Browns.
I know why you're starting with the Saints and Browns. It makes a lot of sense numerically. If you use our widget in our Survivor guide written by Mo Noir up on the site right now, Pool Genius puts that together for us, our partner. You can check down in the description, get a free 3-day trial for all your Survivor strategy and great data tools over there to help with Survivor each and every week. We're looking at these 2 teams dominating the projected popularity for this week, Matt. And I want to have a question and a discussion about leverage right off the bat here, because if these 2 teams who are middling at best, with PJ Walker on the Browns most likely, and what we've seen from the Saints most weeks other than last week when the offense finally broke out and started scoring from outside the red zone. That was the key to the red zone issues. They just need to score from outside the red zone. But I'm looking at potentially here, at least what Pool Genius is telling us, 81% of picks between these two teams. That instantly makes me wonder if I should be taking a shot on somebody else this week, because these are not some of the previous weeks we've had with teams like the Chiefs and the Bills and the Eagles at the top of the win probability table. These are average teams at best, playing, granted, bad teams, but this might be the week where I want to fade the most popular picks if it's going to be these two.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you, but I think at some point you just kind of have to bite the bullet on one of these teams. Because, again, if you start going down the board, you don't feel good about playing the Steelers, even if it is Will Levis. You don't feel good. Certainly not the Dolphins-Chiefs. That game is basically a coin flip right now. You want to back the Falcons? I mean, I guess if you are looking at this Minnesota team and you think that, hey, this is the time to strike on them whenever they are in flux at the quarterback position, I guess I could get there with you on the Falcons. Just know that what an incredible risk that is with the Falcons. We still don't know if we're going to get who we're going to get at quarterback for them in this game right now. And then no way I'm playing against the Seahawks, even with the Ravens. And so you start going down. Oh, you want to back the Patriots against the Commanders? You don't want to do that. I know. You want to back the Packers against the Rams? You don't want to do that. I mean, so you basically, I think at this point, you're going to have to play one of those two teams that you really don't want to play, and you just have to, and you just kind of have to take what you get. One thing I will say is if you're in one of the deals where you can actually have multiple entries, I think, listen, I have been the proponent. You guys know that's the reason I'm no longer in Circus Survivor. I play all my entries on one every single week, trying to get to a point in the season where I, feel comfortable starting to split things up. You look at a week like this, Steven, where the Saints can lose to anybody in the NFL any given week. There's no doubt about that. I don't care how bad the Bears are, and I don't care if it is Tyson Bagent. And then you look at the Browns, and I get it. Clayton Tune is going to be quarterbacking the Cardinals, but the Browns offense certainly isn't anything to write home about either. I think this might be the week where I might start splitting up my entries a little bit. If I was in this Circa contest and I still had all 10 of mine, I might play 9 on the team that I really, really like, and I'd play 1 on the other side just to make sure that I didn't get bounced. I think this would be where I started to kind of split my multiple entries up, because I don't feel good about any one of these games up and down the board. We felt good about a lot of games last week. I don't feel good about any of these games up and down the board this week.
Do you even feel good about the Chargers against the Jets on the road? I mean, that's tricky. I mean, I posed the idea of not picking the Saints or the Browns. And if I'm going to do that, well, now I need to come up with something if I'm not picking them. And I guess I'm looking at, if it is Heineke starting for the Falcons, I actually would feel a little bit better than Ritter, even though he is the turnover-worthy throw machine as of last year. But they moved the ball a lot better once he was in the game against Tennessee. If it's not the Falcons against Minnesota, then I want to ask you about the Pittsburgh Steelers at home on a short week against a rookie quarterback. And I know that it's only a 2.5, 3-point spread. I think it's probably going to be 3.5 by close, but I'm not completely sold on Will Levis going on the road against this pass rush, even though what we saw with him against the Falcons last week was at least promising, to say the least.
Yeah, I guess my first instinct would be going with the Falcons, like you said. If you wanted to if you wanted to fade one of the two chalk picks, I think the Falcons, for me, I mean, look, if they can't get Dobbs ready, and you would have to think that him coming in,
I think he'll start. I'm assuming Dobbs will start, because the guy started on a short week on a playoff week, right? Why would he not start this week? So I don't know about you. I'm assuming he's starting.
Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I was actually listening to NFL radio when I was out earlier today, and they had Kevin O'Connell on there, who was like, we're under the assumption that it's going to be Jaren Hall, but obviously if Dobbs is able to pick up the offense or something like that, it's not out of the question. Look, if it's Jaren Hall, he's a 5th round rookie that nobody wanted and whatever. I get it that Minnesota's defense has played a little bit better over the last few weeks, and that's the truth. It really has. They played better over the last few weeks, but
who they have so much confidence in, they just traded for Josh Dobbs.
Yeah, it's it's like you go down with the Falcons, and if you could look back and at least feel good about it that you went against a rookie fifth rounder
Hall, yeah.
that got shoved into action because your starter got hurt. I think you could at least feel pretty good about it if for some reason you got knocked off there.
And process wise too, Matt, if we're talking about a side in the Falcons who are going to be 5-point favorites or more is what it's trending towards right now early in the week, and less than 5% of entries are going to pick the Falcons. Wouldn't I rather have a 5+ point favorite, less than 5% of entries, than a 7-point favorite and 75 or 49% of the entries or 30% of the entries? Just from a game theory standpoint, that makes sense to me. We just are working in a gray area of whether or not these spreads are actually accurate with complete unknowns at quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think the writing is on the wall for the Cardinals in what they're doing here. And so I actually feel pretty good playing the Browns against them, even with PJ Walker at quarterback, because look, they moved Dobbs to go to Clayton Tune because they need to get another loss, right? They need one more loss. Like, they need to lock in that number 1 pick. And so I kind of smell what they're putting down here. And so
sure, as
much as I would hate to play the Browns this week because the offense is so putrid, the defense is actually still good. And there's been the little bit of leaks that we've gotten has been in the secondary. And like, do we think Clayton Tune is going to go out there with Hollywood Brown and Michael Wilson and light them up? Like, I don't think it's going to happen. Right. So it's just, I think I'd hold my nose and play the Browns first and foremost if I had them available. If I didn't, I honestly think my second choice would be the Falcons, even over the Saints, because the Saints have no-showed the vast majority of the games this season. They got lucky in a couple, but I mean, there's nothing that you could feel great about with the Saints. And listen, the Bears got trucked this past week, but there's a drop touchdown in that game that could have made the game look a little bit better. And there was some other stuff that went on that I don't think was like the end of the world for the Bears team. So would it shock me if the Bears upset the Saints outright? Not at all. So yeah, if I wasn't going to play the chalk in the Browns, I actually think I would pivot to the Falcons.
And you like all of these better than the Steelers against the Titans on Thursday?
Yeah. I mean, so here's my only problem, right? Is I guess Mitch Trubisky is better than what we're getting at Will Levis right now, but I don't know for sure.
Pickett did do media availability on Tuesday and said he's going to play.
Well, he said he wants to play. Is what he
wants
said.
to play. Okay,
he wants to play, which last I checked is not up to him. Like, it's whether he's true. Yes. So that's what I was saying. Like, that's why this week, I'm not even kidding. This is one of the hardest weeks in the NFL that I remember, like, in a very, very, very long time, given all of the uncertainty at so many skill positions and so much that's going on. I cannot remember a more difficult week in the NFL. I mean, listen, it would probably be my 4th pick, if not a pretty close 3rd pick to the Saints over the Bears. Like, I mean, I don't hate it, but I did see at least enough from Levis and the Titans and things last week. And if it is Mitch Trubisky, which again, we don't really know, but if it is Mitch Trubisky, we do have a sample size of him being terrible. Like, we have a sample size of Mitch Trubisky not being able to get it done in the NFL. So that just gives me a little bit of pause.
There's one other game we really haven't talked about that I at least want to touch on, because with the nature of this week, I think some people might be tempted because it's a flashy offense with a big name quarterback going up against Zach Wilson and the Jets. And the Chargers are on the road. They're up to a 3-point favorite on the road. And even though it is one of the more reliable quarterbacks, given the group of quarterbacks we've previously discussed already on this show, like, it's night and day compared to the others we've talked about, I can't press the button on the Chargers in Survivor this week. I don't know how you feel about it, but to me, it's as simple as the Jets defense has made 3 top-tier quarterbacks look silly this year in Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Jalen Hurts. And they are 100% in the playoff mix somehow still in the AFC. And I just do not trust that the Chargers are going to do the right thing, be a disciplined football team. I could not care less about how good they looked against the Chicago Bears and Tyson Bagent last week. It's night and day compared to the defense they're going to face this week.
Yeah. If you did it right, you shouldn't have the Chargers left anyway, because you should have played them last week. So, like, if you're playing this right, they shouldn't even be an option for you. So I wouldn't make two mistakes 2 weeks in a row. And that means the mistake being not playing them last week, and then the mistake being trying to shove them in this week on the road against a really good defense. So I would not make two mistakes 2 weeks in a row. I would just move on. Like I said, my power rankings would be the Browns number 1. I understand the offenses look gross, but at the end of the day, the secondary is the only thing that's had a little bit of a leak with that defense, and Clayton Tune, to me, is not going to be the dude to go out there and light them up by any stretch. So for me, Browns number 1, Falcons number 2, Saints number 3, and then, like I said, a pretty close 4 would be the Steelers, but I don't think you have to dig that far this week. You probably haven't used the Browns yet, and if not, then you probably haven't used the Falcons yet either. So you probably have 2 pretty good choices left.
All right, for me, if I'll kind of caveat this, I agree with you. If you want to go the safest route, Saints and Browns make sense. For me, I'm going to give you the game theory perspective, and if like 70% of the entries out there, maybe higher, are going to be split between the Saints and Cleveland, two mediocre at best teams, or at least mediocre at best quarterbacks, with PJ Walker on the Browns, I'm going to try and fade that and try and be, on the right side of potentially a lot of entries getting knocked out here this week. So that means I have to pick somebody other than the Saints and the Browns this week for my top 3 if I'm going to go the game theory route. And the Falcons would be number 1 for me. If Jaron Hall is going to start this week, we'll see. So I feel, and also I need Taylor Heineke to start. Let me just say this. If this is Desmond Ridder versus Josh Dobbs,
yeah, scratch it off.
I'm going back to Saints or Browns. Yeah. Simple as that.
Scratch it off. Yeah.
Yeah. If it's Jaron Hall versus Taylor Heineke, I feel pretty darn good about it, especially if less than 10% of entries are going to use the Falcons. So that's my number 1 with an asterisk, so to speak. Again, can't pick the Saints or the Browns. So my number 2 would probably be the Steelers on Thursday night. For a more in-depth reason, I would invite you guys to go listen to the Beat the Closing Number podcast. Mo Nawara gave a lot of great arguments there, despite all the flashy touchdowns we saw from Will Levis last week. Go check that out. So that would be my number 2. And Matt, I honestly can't in good conscience recommend a number 3. It's just the way it is this week.
I get it. One thing I do want to reiterate: if you are in a contest where you have multiple entries, I think this is where you start. At least consider splitting them up, or at least like playing one of the entries on the other side to where you don't get bounced this week. This is a tough week in the NFL, guys. This is just tough up and down. So many key injuries, so many tight games, so many of the better teams are on the road against some of these other teams. Like, there's just a lot of stuff where I think that this is a rough week to really figure out. So I wouldn't get bounced this week. I'll put it that way. Like, I'd feel good getting bounced in a week where I went in with a pick that I felt really great about, and then if that loses, and so be it. But I wouldn't get bounced this week on something like this. Like, playing every entry on the Browns, or every entry on the Saints, or every entry on the Falcons. Like, I don't think I'd feel pretty good about that when it was all said and done if I did end up going down. So if you have multiples, I would start to consider splitting them up this week with everything. As we mentioned, guys, we do have articles on this over at thelines.com. Go in, read all those great words, and we're talking about it all the time over in the Discord as well. So hop in the Discord, talk with everyone, talk through everything with everybody in there. Because listen, you've made it pretty far. I mean, like, you are in unless your pool is like the sharpest, luckiest people on the face of the earth, it has been whittled down pretty good at this point. And like, you have made it pretty far. So don't make a foolish decision. Don't make a rash decision. Make sure that you're putting it in and with something that you feel really good about.
Great week to talk about it. Talk it through. Great week to talk about it.
It is for sure. Upper right-hand corner of thelines.com. You can click that little Discord button up there as well. For Steven, I'm Matt. Good luck on your Week 9 Survivor plays.